Hello and welcome to the Retail Journey Podcast. I'm James Harris.
And I'm Charles Greathouse. Today we have with us a very special guest, Mr. Creighton Kiper. Creighton, welcome.
Good afternoon, or is it morning time?
Yeah.
It's afternoon.
We're here.
We don't have windows.
There are no windows. It's afternoon, morning. It's a new year and a new you, which used to be your role. Creighton is the Vice President of Merchandising at Walmart for Beauty. Before that was VP DMM of the Wellness section at Walmart. Before that was in digital product. Before that was having a lot of fun.
Making me sound old right now.
As a merchant, a couple of different roles over at Walmart. But Creighton, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, glad you're here. Welcome to the Retail Journey.
That's right.
Which it sounds like you've been on. Not too long. I mean, a healthy amount of time on the Retail Journey.
That's right.
So what's the most exciting thing for 2024 in beauty?
I would tell you I'm super excited about what we're getting ready to do. We've had a lot of brands and strategies that are going to kind of, I would say, not peak, but culminate in 2024. So excited about that. And that'll be across anywhere from cosmetics to hair care and a few categories in between. But I think I'm most excited about what I'm going to see in team. It's been a young team, and getting those reps and everyone kind of getting comfortable with the way we operate and moving all in the same direction. And then all of that's going to be aided by a lot of the technology and innovation that the team has been working on, which I'm sure we'll get more into.
Yeah. Let's go. It's always fun when you lay down some work. Those initial stages, you got a vision, something
That's right.
come to fruition. You're working with your partners. You're starting to grow the team, and it seems like 24 is the year we're like, all right, some of these things start hitting the road.
That's right.
You've been in that beauty business now for how long?
A year and a half. Longer than that. I think it'll be 2 years in March.
2 years in March.
So new guy card is well past.
Can't laminate that guy.
So 100% post-COVID.
100% post-COVID, which has been an interesting dynamic to learn a little bit about the business prior. And obviously I was in health and wellness during the pandemic, so you have that view, and then you move post when everyone's kind of getting back out to living their quote unquote normal lives.
Right.
And, how do you run a business in that area is really interesting.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I took away from COVID was how I think we realized we can change faster than we used to.
That's right.
And so you saw a lot of technologies really sped up for online grocery pickup, things of that nature, a lot of digital first. What are some things in your space that maybe that's been a benefit to, that you've been able to change faster than you'd thought possible?
Yeah, I mean, I want to make a quick comment on something you said. There's a fundamental belief that some of us walk through, and it just basically says that constraints create innovation. And I think that's a bit of what we saw, is when X amount of options are taken off the table, but you still need to deliver and exceed an expectation. What do you do? And it was kind of that ability to adapt very rapidly and have that singular focus from Walmart just as a whole that really is carried forward into 2023 and into 2024. But James, I would say a few things. I would say a few things that you would kind of shake your head and say, okay, like we knew that was happening, and that's anything that's like digitally enabled move forward. I think the customer became a lot more comfortable browsing, searching. Social has played a large part, specifically in beauty, because you move quickly from inspiration to a transaction, and really it's about how fast you close that gap. So it's just one click. And then we've just seen other things. Customers, because there's so much information out there, I would argue sometimes way too much, they are so informed about what products are, what they're made of, and then more importantly, their skin or their hair or their needs, that the option of just giving them average is like not acceptable anymore. And then you layer technology on that, and it's not the fact that a customer would drive somewhere and have to drive 10 miles or 20 minutes, whatever. It's literally like the difference between, do I click on this app or this app?
Right.
Right. And so
It's a 2-second decision.
That's right. So I would say there's a lot of things that have come through that has moved forward. And then I would just say the mindset, it's a bit more agile. I think there's a little bit more grace to test something because you have a really good consumer insight. And even if it doesn't turn out exactly the way you wanted it to, as long as you learn something along the way, you can build on that to have an even better solution than you thought you were going to have to begin with.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I can recall, back in the early consumables days, era of Scott Huff, the fail fast, learn.
That's right.
And I remember people, not maybe hitting a number, but learning a lot. And early on wondering like, that doesn't walk the dog. You gotta hit the numbers. And then over time you learn like, no, there's so much value in understanding a little bit more about where the customer's going and
That's right.
the ways that you're going to serve them next. Some of these changes are forced upon us. Some of them we're kind of driving. You want to talk a little bit about, okay, when it comes to change, COVID, the mother of forced change, necessity all over the place, acceleration of tech. And then there's some where it's like, hey, we want to intentionally move the business in a direction that it should go.
Yep.
And how you navigate those changes, when you decide, okay, we're going to respond, quickly, or we're gonna start driving here.
Yeah, I think there were I'd say kind of like three things that I would really zero in. I think the first thing is a vision with a plan and getting everyone aligned to that. Without a plan, it's just a hallucination. And so you say, I want to go do this, and then you don't make any progress towards that. I know I listed it as number one. I would say good people. Good people that are experienced, curious, motivated to make a difference.
Yeah.
And then I say you want to make sure that you have some type of process or structure in place that allows you to be nimble where you need to be and resource where you need to continue to manage to the core. And when we think through transformation, you've got to have all three. You've got to have a psychological safety net. You've got to have a charter that says here are the 5 big things and updates around that, because you are still running the core business, but you're trying to move it in this direction that's more digital, that's more personalized, that's more relevant to the customer. And those are just sometimes muscles that we have never used or don't use too often. And it's an and. If Latrice were sitting here, it's never an or. It's an and for our business and for the customer. Yeah.
So vision without a plan, that's a hallucination.
That is.
I love that.
That's good.
We're in it's January now when we're recording this. It'll come out, sometime maybe after January, but it's the annual planning. We talk a lot in our business of an investment in good people. That's an investment that's probably going to pay back.
Yep.
It feels like an easy thing to invest in. When you start having to invest in other things, it gets harder.
Yep.
But good people tend to always get a strong return. Love the plan, love the idea of a process. That's coming from the context of the world's largest retailer in a position of leading one of the most dynamic businesses. And I think about so many businesses that exact framework applies to as well. I think about our suppliers or your suppliers and our supplier partners. Like, that matters. You've got a vision. That's super neat. Do you have a plan?
Yeah.
Show us a little bit about the plan and navigating change. If you've got those three, you're going to be nimble and
that's right.
make progress in a direction that matters.
That's right.
You pointed out good people, and good people come with different personalities, right? And so I've discovered there are some really good people that love change and embrace it, and others that, it almost is frightening.
Yep.
As within leading your team, how do you set kind of the stage for change to be able to take place with those different?
Yeah. Well, the reality is most of us are change adverse. We like our patterns and our way of doing things. But we talk a lot about a psychological safety net.
I love that.
So being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and recognizing what that is, and being okay with raising your hand. So we prioritize curiosity over judgment.
Yeah.
So those are really important. And then the reality is you kind of have to go through a few reps. When you're if you haven't been running and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this 10K, and you go and run your first mile, you're like, this this is terrible. Like, what? But it's kind of like you have to dig into this reservoir of doing it a few more times, and then you start realizing, oh, I can do this, or more importantly, this is what it feels like to kind of start undergoing a different process or different change. And when you start to do that a number of times, whether it's reading books or riding a bike or running or swimming or whatever, it's really interesting. You watch people become more adaptable in learning what it feels like when change is happening, and that there's kind of this normal process they go through, but they can see the end of the light sooner than others, and then that's how we move. The other thing I would say is like diverse perspectives help as well. It almost kind of guards or preps us for change. And in a business where we're literally trying to serve different types of hair types and skin types and expressions and ages and, you know, men and women and stuff like that, we have to have a diverse perspective because all of us have some blind spot somewhere. Right. And so when you can cover that, because literally the products you're trying to sell cover something that is different from another individual, we get more prepped on, like how do we stay in the curious zone versus we've got it figured out.
Yeah, I like that. Curiosity over judgment. We work with a lot of new suppliers to Walmart and talk to quite a few that aren't even in Walmart but would like to be one day. What's some advice you could give for new brands approaching Walmart? It's a shifting landscape. Some things are certain, EDLC, EDLP, but the systems, Walmart Illuminate now, digital first. What's some good kind of advice for new suppliers?
I mean, at the root of it, I would say just basically like we want to do the very best for our customer possible. And if you share in that same idealism with your products, your brand, we're probably going to be off to a really good start. And if I give one more bullet about customer, just knowing your customer more than anybody else knows them is really important as well. Digital is obviously important. So, don't kind of just get married into the store side of the business. We are the largest omni retailer, and we are encountering different types of change and tensions that no one else, frankly, in the world is probably facing, and we're trying to solve those problems. But digital is really important because so much of how you're triggered or inspired or the way you want to shop is going to come through an app right now, even if the final purchase is in a store. So understanding how that funnel works is important, and having already had practice in there is really important. It's actually a really unique place that direct-to-consumer brands sit because they kind of have a digitally native audience to begin with. And so they've learned kind of how to not only cultivate their brand, but cultivate the relationship with those customers ahead of time, and learn how to kind of manage that data so that they can continuously get better in real time. And then there's the basics, right? EDLC, EDLP. They're congruent. They're not separable. And availability and all the basics around making sure the product is there. So when a customer orders it, or picks it up or goes into a store, that there's no disappointment there. So I would just say those are the few things. Retail is a fast game. It's also a patient one. People want to move fast. I like to move fast. Sometimes things don't turn out as fast as we like. But to have kind of the grit and the patience to keep hammering away, if you had your first meeting with a merchant at Walmart, and you're not in 4,000 doors out the gate, recognize that being in 400 stores is a lot, and it's an opportunity to actually help you go from not focusing on 0 to 60, but the 60 to 100 miles an hour. And a small number versus a small number stays a small number, right? Small number times a big number it can be a big number, and that can be really good or that can be really bad. Really bad. So I think those are just some things that I'd share, and we go through this a lot in the beauty business because of the customer's appetite for new and trend in the industry we sit in. We have to make sure that we're keeping it exciting, but make no mistake, and I'd probably just close here with this idea that we're a retailer and we need vendors. Like it's a key ingredient. Last time I checked, we make very little of the products that we have. So we want to make sure that we're really good stewards and that we're respectful and honor the brands and also represent our customers really well.
I mean, it's great advice, though. I can think of 3 or 4 very large brands that at one point or another we've worked with, and they started in 300 or 400 stores. Now they're 100 to 250 million in sales just to Walmart.
Yep.
So better to learn on 400 stores than to learn on 4,000.
It's much cheaper lessons at the smaller the scale. At the same time, it's small number times a big number. That's that math will add up every time. So talking about transformation and change and where you've seen that play out. So we've talked through the retail side. What about brands that have gone through, as they listen to customers and see the need to reinvent themselves? Any ingredients come to mind that you've seen where like, yeah, that's worked really well, or no, you've not evolved or you've not transformed and you probably needed to, and why perhaps someone might take their eye off the ball. So if there's a brand listening to this and they think they have an idea who their customer is, what are the either best practices to make sure you're staying with them, or the warning signs that you might have lost sight?
Yeah. I never thought I'd quote Tom Brady in this,
I like
this
it.
podcast here, but there's this phrase, and I might misquote it, but he says something like, winners focus on winning, losers focus on winners. And I think the point of it, kind of just the dichotomy of it, is like, if you're focused on the other brand in your competitive set, you're missing the point. If you're focused on the customer value proposition, the customers that buy your products day in and day out, maybe the customers that only kind of visit you every now and then, and you're asking yourself, well, why is that? And you keep dialing in on, how do I make my product better? Or maybe it is the best product, it's just more relevant. It's the awareness and consideration set of things. That's where I've seen the most success. And so whether it's it's a brand that's been around and they're transforming themselves, a lot of times they have, like, I'm going to say like they're really good juice. But what they're doing is they've reconnected data first and foremost, so they're making investments in technology from a customer data side, and then they're making investments in the digital arm of their business so that they can be more nimble and more personalized and more direct with their customer. And then they just work that together, and then we're real transparent with the retailer because we want the same things, which is to grow business and grow loyalty and trust. And it's usually a pretty, winning formula. And, we've seen several brands that learn proactively, and then sometimes you can learn the hard way. But one way or another, you're going to learn something and then have to make a choice so that you stay relevant for the customer.
Yeah. So kind of on the same subject, but shifting gears a little bit. This is something I've been looking forward to talking to you about because I'm not super familiar with it. But Walmart, you've helped launch Walmart's accelerator,
That's right.
Walmart's Start. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think kind of just tapping into the ideal of how fast can we learn, recognizing at the point when we were reading data that the majority of the growth in the industry was actually coming in the fringes. It wasn't coming from the core of the business. And when you think about the power of what social does, what direct-to-consumer is, like the awareness and consideration was high, even if the volume was small or medium, so relevancy mattered. So we wanted to create a platform to kind of incubate this way of working and this learning, and we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot around the actual mechanics of incubating a brand versus accelerating a brand, and we've learned all the things that Walmart is good and not good at, because we love productivity, and that's still going to be the core of the business. But in kind of this new economy of relevance, and then how do you move something from $6 million in 1 year to 100 by year 2, which has happened? Like, it takes patience, learning, refining, and growing. And so Walmart Start has kind of been that platform year 1. We're really excited about year 2 and what it brings into 2024. So when I mentioned these areas that we're really excited about, quite a few of them are coming out of this program called Walmart Start. And we hope to leverage those learnings and share them across, because it's not per se, it is a beauty accelerator, but it was never meant to be something that we hold to ourselves. And,
it could move to
and
other
those,
parts.
Yeah, yeah. And those teams are learning and asking questions, and we're all getting better.
So how do you?
who's?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we're going on the same path. Like, who is it for? Like, how would you know? Like, yeah, Walmart Start might be for me. And then how do you find Walmart Start?
Well, hopefully you can find it on the website, corporate page. You might even see some, tiles inside of a product listing page that alludes to it. So hopefully it's not too hard to find. We've had plenty of press around it. But really it's not so much who is it targeted to. I mean, it's small and medium business for sure.
Yeah.
But it's obviously brands that have a meaningful value proposition, and we don't do business today. And we want to get past 0 to 50 miles an hour, and we want to hit the road.
Yeah,
at
running
45,
start.
60
Let's go.
miles an hour. And so that's what we're doing. So you will always see brands that have a digital aperture, strong customer community, or at a very minimum, like a very targeted like problem that they're going to solve that we know is underserved within the business. And we learned a lot in freshman year on what worked and what doesn't. A lot of what worked, but learning along the way. And that's actually helped us. Like, I'm really bullish on this second class because of what we see, and the quality of leadership underneath those brands and suppliers that we'll be bringing forth is pretty phenomenal as well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What's an example? You said the growth was coming from the fringe, not the core. I think I understand what you mean by that, but I don't want to assume. What's an example?
If you core businesses are things that you see down the aisle, all the time.
The big brands that have been there for a long time.
Personal care, beauty, but the fringe are kind of these direct-to-consumer skincare brands and cosmetic brands, or just things that haven't been solved before. And so that's where we were seeing, and that's stuff that's actually not recorded in Nielsen. Exactly. You got to go run a different type of data set, or even just maybe look at visits and impressions to try and equate it back to really see what was going. But that's what the challenge, that's what we saw in the data, and it was a trend. Sephora has been, fantastic at kind of thinking through how to incubate and grow that space, but we saw it becoming more and more common. And there has been, some acceleration on the core. I think it's gotten those brands to take notice and get better. And so now you see it's good for the industry as a whole, because, Mr. Sam used to say all the time, competition is just better for the business and better for the customer. So it's had a two-way impact that's positive, but that's what I mean when I say that.
Yeah. It's helpful. Really solving new problems.
Yep.
Yeah, identifying new opportunities for the customer.
Yeah. Well, we talked about a lot of change. Starting something brand new within Walmart Start. So last year was the freshman class. You've got the next class coming. Any a counsel to anybody, at a large company thinking about starting a big program that's never existed before?
Good people, have a plan.
Yeah. Vision without a plan is hallucination. Okay.
And have buy-in from leadership. Quite candidly, I mean, this was not a one-man or even one-team deal. There are lots of supporting teams that help to breathe life into this program and get it moving forward.
Yeah.
And, it's been really exciting to see what, kind of the power of a total team looks like when it comes to trying to get something pushed across and done to deliver for the customer.
It's super innovative. It's kind of like having a problem it wasn't solved, so you went and found a way to solve it, and that's with the team, and that feels more cultural than an instant in time.
That's right.
What's it look like to create a culture of innovation?
Yeah. You're right on the fact that it's cultural, and that, I'm actually not surprised that we were able to kind of pull that together, because, since the beginning, what I've understood about Walmart, that's always been permission to operate in that way when you see something that's an opportunity. But, a culture of innovation, internally, again, it's about curiosity. It's about getting out in the market, getting out on the internet, apps, social, seeing what's trending, and then asking yourself, how do we do this? And then once you kind of have an idea of how do we do this, is there a better way?
Yeah.
I think from a supplier perspective, You want to find people and brands that kind of have a similar DNA. And maybe even more so, that they're even to the higher extreme, and there's things that you're asking them and learning from as you guys are both going down the journey. So I would say that it's good people, have a plan and a vision, make sure that you create a space where it's curiosity and not judgment, and you can move. So it's a lot of what I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, no, I love that. And when I think about where you started when we first asked the question, it all started with the customer.
That's right.
And then your last comment on giving yourself permission. I feel like there's a lot of people that need to hear that, of like, give yourself permission to go after the customer, to understand them deeper, to make the changes necessary to solve their problems. I feel like early on in my merchandising career, probably yours as well, in fact, I'm pretty sure yours as well, they would look at like the audacity to do something so different than how things have been done. Yeah. And that's exactly how Walmart came about.
Yeah.
Audacity for the customer, for reasons beyond yourself, for something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
Love that. Love seeing it in the beauty team where change is so rapid.
So I have a question. We've talked a lot about change. I was reading a quote that we're probably all familiar with, Sam Walton. He says you can't just do the same thing every time. Change is all around you. To succeed, you got to stay in front of it. Yep. But he also put in certain core values to create a culture, much of which hasn't changed. Some of it has. Things evolve. What are the parts of Walmart that aren't negotiable, that aren't changing?
Yeah, I think as a leadership group, whether it's on the beauty team or consumables under Sylvia, or even up to Doug, like, it's been really clear that our 4 basic beliefs, like, they are anchors and are operating the way we operate. So you think about respect for the individual, strive for excellent service to our customers, and act with integrity. Like, those aren't going anywhere. And more than anything, like, a culture is like a set of behaviors that sit on those principles, right? So if I throw another word in there, virtues, like, you have to act these things out. You have to model these things out. And so those things will not change. And if you think about them, they're good. They have no expiration date. Right? They're good in any climate. I think what changes is when we talk about being in a retail business, different products will come, technologies will create different conveniences or access points. And, in the beauty business, we have to be able to move towards that, but always under the understanding of, like, those principles that, like, we're in a people business. We happen to sell stuff, and, we're going to make sure that we stick to how we respect customers, associates, our operators in the field, and serve merchandise the right way. So I think those are things that stay. Things that change, I mean,
everything else.
Yeah. we and discussions will happen, like, well, do we do that or not?
Right.
That, but, like, everything else is actually open for discussion, right?
Yeah.
Like, how the business evolves. And obviously in the last 4 years, the amount of changes I've been able to witness within the company, I mean, it's a lot, right? But that's what the customer's demanding.
Yeah. Do you see a cultural fit as new potential suppliers are trying to come into Walmart? There's almost like we're learning that, I don't think we're culturally aligned. Or does that show up while you're choosing suppliers and brands that are going to succeed well at Walmart?
I mean, it can, and maybe you kind of notice something, but I think when you're very transparent on what your intent is, I think those same brands can kind of ask themselves that same question, and maybe they might either change their tune or have to rethink what it looks like to work with Walmart. But most of the time, most brands know what the program of Walmart is, what our intent is, what our operating model is, what our core values are. And so they come in, or at least, if someone is astray, they at least understand, and for that meeting, they behave appropriately. But we typically don't have issues there, so it's always good.
All right, so if you're thinking about a merchant who's struggling with either change, feeling like it's needed, or struggling through the process, what advice would you give to a merchant today in today's Walmart as they think about their year ahead?
Yeah, I mean it's going back to first principles, which is kind of the things that I've mentioned, which is this company supports you acting in the best interests of the customer. Change is a bit of like a place we live in. It's not something that kind of comes and surprises you. We live inside of that, and so it's just that curious mindset and the realization that we're in ongoing change. And so this is a bit of what it feels like. And there are times when it feels like it tempers down, which is kind of when you feel like you've kind of mastered the new thing or you understand more innately the new thing. And then, but again, when you go in there, it's almost like your mindset changes and a new thing's coming.
Yeah.
And when you know a new thing's coming, you actually kind of start to maybe peek to the next page to see what you think might be coming.
Yeah.
And that kind of softens the blow on the next wave of change that's typically coming. But we've got great leaders that make sure that teams are prepared for what that looks like. And you thoroughly explain why we're making the change and how it benefits the customer and how it benefits the company. And again, everyone still goes through a little bit of the shock, but becoming more accepting of it is something that, again, since 2020 is just kind of like not linearly, but almost asymptotically picked up as a culture of adaptability.
Yeah. And then similar but different question. So now you're, I don't know, a brand or even simpler, an account manager, trying to win with Walmart with a little bit of experience. What are the things that you would give counsel? What's the advice you give to someone who's wanting to win with Walmart as a supplier partner to them?
So we mentioned focus on the customer, be a steward of the brand. I ask the suppliers a lot of times to be stewards of our brand. Mm-hmm. Hopefully I explained what Walmart represents enough that they can hold that light and carry it forward. And then communication's important. Like if you don't get something or I don't get something, like we should have room to talk about that and not look at each other like we're idiots or anything like that. Because words are powerful and they can move people, move mountains, whatever. And so you want to make sure everyone's on the same page. But most of the time, a supplier and a merchant, they're kind of experiencing the same things because suppliers are updating their capabilities and their strategies as well. But we need to make sure we're communicating those things to each other. So that's probably the part I would add in there. Yeah.
Okay. Double click and a fun question. If they're trying to communicate and they haven't gotten a response from a buyer, not that would ever happen.
Yeah.
Charles apologizes every day.
Every time I apologize for not responding to emails as a merchant. So I'm owed lack of response. But what kind of counsel you give someone who's like, man, I'm trying, and they just keep not responding? What do you?
I text, LinkedIn. No, I'm joking. I don't want to pretend like that probably doesn't happen. I'd like to say like leadership is very in tune with like making sure that we're responsive. The open door policy exists for more than a number of things. But I would just tell you it's better for me to get feedback and make sure that my merchants are responding well. So I would just say to that supplier, like, don't give up after one email response. If it's been like a week or a month, we probably need to kind of like elevate the communication frame and know that it's not personal. We're both trying to solve the same problem. Yeah.
It's kind of like, when's it too soon to text after, like the first date? It's like when's it too soon to send that follow up after the
we have rules like bad news should travel faster than good news.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And people need to know deeply what it is that we're doing. And so we should treat things where when there's gaps in that, I don't know what the deadline is or when this to turn in, or you need to know this, then there's got to be a sense of urgency around that. And I would say to the merchant, and I've been one of those that, missed an email and not hit it in 24 hours. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me know that like I missed something that if we had to let this go on for a few more days, like it would have been a really big problem or it would have been something that we couldn't have salvaged. So
because it left my radar.
Yeah.
Right.
So I wasn't seeing that.
Because merchants are human too, right?
Yeah.
They are.
You're going to miss some things.
So anything we haven't touched on that you want to share before we hit you with the lightning round?
I'm ready for lightning, Charles.
All right. First one. This is a zinger. What's on your reading list?
Ooh, what's on my reading list? I'm currently reading a book about time and how we like misuse it and waste it as Americans, but the concept of it in the U.S. It's called The Secret Pulse of Time.
Ooh.
So I'm reading that right now. Excited about it. There's a few other books like Dopamine Nation and a few other things I'm going to read. The Inevitable, which is kind of about convergence of technology that I have on my list to read this year. But those are just kind of a few things. I like trying to understand what makes us tick. How do we think the way we think, and how that influences everything else in the realm of industry.
That's fascinating. We like to ask here, what's your greatest retail fail?
You know,
It's the fail segment.
I was worried about that question.
The one that hurt really bad and now is a good story.
Because, you know, as a merchant in Walmart, you know, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. I guess it's good because he's retired. But there was always the example of like the life-size nutcracker that
That's
Eddie
my
Tutt
go-to. Eddie Tutt.
who's a legend, by the way. I mean, did you know that we're at the point where now the legends have like kids inside of Walmart now?
Yeah.
It's one of them. And then I was like worried because like I don't have anything that fantastic, and if I don't bring anything else, like then I'm gonna look like I've never made a mistake. But you know, I don't know if it's whether it's a suppressed a feeling or not. But I couldn't think of like just this big one. But what I would tell you, I know for a fact, is that I make more mistakes than anyone. Like I fail.
You got the
more
quantity
times.
game down.
I fail more times than probably the normal merchant or leader inside of Walmart, and I've done that for the longest time since I've been in Walmart. What I have learned though is to do it quickly, learn from it, and try and do it in such a speed that like very few realize what has happened. And I've been able to reflect on that because that has helped me learn very rapidly.
Yeah.
So I would just say like my career has actually been one probably more of failure than success.
Yeah.
But the failure is why I've been able to succeed.
Yeah. Since our audience always wants to know something that you bought that was way too big and was a terrible choice, I'll share one from Pets.
All right, go for it.
Not from, you didn't buy it. I sent for Tim Dodge when he was the merchant.
Oh, man.
I wrote the order for a feature for Old Roy 50-pound bag of dog food. So if you know that, you're starting to get some context.
It's a big item.
I sent 3 weeks of supply to every store because that's fine. It's a 4-week feature, so just 3 weeks. Like, that's not going to be a problem. And then El Paso, Texas called me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know why? Because I sent them like 14 truckloads
Oh my God.
of Old Roy red 50-pound bag of dog food because they sold a pallet of dog food, of that item's dog food,
Yeah.
every 2.5 hours.
Wow.
That's how much El Paso, Texas Walmart sold of that. And
Yeah,
so
that's where you got to sort the old SSO. And
that taught me
think they're
that
throughput.
average doesn't walk the
Doesn't
dog.
cut it.
There's an
That's
actual cube element that you
That's
need to
right.
pay attention to, and we've
Oh man.
yeah, it's a painful one. I've
would
written
like to
much
have
better
listened-
features ever since.
I would love to listen to that phone call.
They put me on a plane to take me down there to show me in real
Oh,
life.
yeah.
Like, yeah, here's how bad this. Oh yeah,
I'm gonna have to text Tim. And
That's
get the real
didn't make
story.
that mistake again.
And what's your biggest learning from 2023?
Just one, huh? I might have to.
Or one
Force
of
a
the big
few.
ones?
What did 2023 teach you? We can
Or
do that.
more than one? Yeah, there you
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I'm sitting here thinking. Part of the reason I'm thinking is because, like in Walmart world, like the new year hasn't started, but it has. So like it's this weird transition.
Haven't
February.
celebrated the fiscal new
space.
year
We
yet.
haven't celebrated the fiscal new year, but as we're winding down 2023, I would say a few things as I think about the business. Momentum is like hard to gain, and it is hard to keep. And there's like different behaviors to do one, and then there's different behaviors necessary to keep the other, because like performance and success can become like this contentment thing that then turns into like underappreciating it. So that's one thing I've learned. I think another, and I mean this with sincerity, is, the amount of stuff that the beauty team's doing, the company's doing, the supplier community's doing, that's affiliated with Walmart inside of Bentonville. Like, Bentonville, fundamentally believe, has like the power to impact and influence the world. And it came to me kind of in a very real fashion in 2023. And so I've learned that. Outside of that, I'd probably say, like, raising teenagers is hard.
Preach.
I have been in 2023, so
Let's go.
those are my top learnings.
Yeah, I love it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Creighton, for
course.
coming out. This has been a great conversation.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. Hope to see y'all soon again.
Yeah, appreciate you.
All right, and thank you all for listening. As always, you can download us wherever you get your podcasts, or find us on our website at highimpactanalytics.com, and we hope you tune in next time. Thank you.